Hey guys, if I sound tired, it's because I am tired. It's kind of late. Uh, but I said I would do this, so this is me doing this. The kind of stuff that I was planning on covering is more stuff about like it's more it's the stuff surrounding um I guess you could say lectures 4 or lectures 5 up to like the end of reductions. There's not much that I'm going to be covering, but like it's sort of like it's like the meat of the course, like the most important stuff, you know. Object representation is kind of like a thing that's exists to supplement this stuff. Um, Turing machines, like drawing Turing machines and coming up with Turing machines and stuff. Those are like all that stuff is just kind of skills required to help understand this section, and this is like the section that actually counts. Like so it's like the section that actually matters. So I'm gonna go through like some definitions and stuff because some people don't know what things mean, and I need people to know what things mean so that we can actually talk about some stuff. Uh, there might be like a bigger section or like towards the end where I discuss reduction a bit, why it works, that kind of thing. Um, I'm planning on going through one of the examples or like one of the memo answers in the notes and explaining why that works. But yeah, that's what I have. To the side, let me just to the side here. I brought some words with me just to get me started. Um, I might bring up some other stuff later, but like this is the stuff that kind of irked me from the last like test or two. People not really knowing how to use these words and stuff. I'm gonna lay these out like this. Yeah, so we'll start here. Um, I'll put a like if this goes on YouTube, I'll put like a description, like a link or like a timestamp, like in the description, because I don't know how to use YouTube. Of like if you're comfortable with definitions and stuff, um, to just go to the part where I talk about reductions. Um, yeah, I'm gonna start with this word here because a lot of people don't know what it means. Um, so I like using the Richard-Zach definition because I think the Richard-Zach definition covers everything. A lot of people are under the conception that the word countable just refers to anything finite. A lot of people are under the conception that, or like have the idea that countable only refers to infinite sets. So basically, like the word countable, it means, let's say we have some set A, right? A is just, I don't know, some set. We say A is countable if there exists so we basically say A is a countable set if there exists a surjective function from the natural numbers to the set A, right? Why I feel the need to specify surjection? Because again, it's back to what I was saying earlier. Some people think the word countable implies infinite, and that's not the case, right? Countable can mean one of two things. It means either finite or it means countably infinite. Right? It means one of these two things, right? Um, why does this definition make sense? Well, let's say A is the set 1, 2, right? And it's fairly easy that we can just make a surjection from the natural numbers to the set we just say. I'm going to assign 1 to 1, I'm going to assign 1, I'm going to assign 2 to 2, and then every other natural number, we're just going to assign that to 2. Easily a surjection, right? And say, what if A is just, I'm going to be very informal with notation, so bear with me. All natural evens. Well, then we can just say, okay, well, 1's going to go to 2, 2's going to go to 4, 2's going to go to 6, 4's going to go to 8. This is a bijection, and since all bijections are surjective, it works, right? So it satisfies the definition, right? So there's an example of like an infinite set being countable, and then a finite set being countable. It's not wrong to like if you say, for example, the natural numbers are countable. It's not wrong, right? It's not wrong. It's just it's less precise. You're not going to get marked down for saying the natural numbers are countable. It's perfectly okay. Another thing I want to like just before I finish, right? When I say countable means finite, referring to sets only when I'm saying this, right? Countable is a set property, right? Only sets can be, okay, well, yeah, sets, we say sets are countable or they're uncountable, right? So if you give me a binary string and you say the binary string is countable, I don't know what you mean, because that's not a thing people say. Similarly, when people say the Turing machine is countable, I also don't know what you mean, because that's not a thing people say. But yeah, that's that covered. Take that one off the list. Decidable is a very similar thing, or like people are having a very similar issue there. Difference is decidable isn't necessarily a set property so much as it is a language property, right? What do I mean by that? So if we have some finite alphabet, I'll just use the binary, the binary alphabet, right? Any set of strings over this alphabet we say is a language, right? Just like a random side note, there was a person in one of the tests who basically made the claim that the set of all countable languages is countable, and I was a bit confused when he came and queried, and then I thought about it for a little bit. If the set of all, like, if we're just considering some finite alphabet, the set of all languages would be the power set of this. And this is countable, this is obviously uncountable, right? So, like, yeah, the set of all countable languages is not countable. That's yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yes, back to this. Decidable is a language property. So when we're talking about decidability, we are talking about subsets of like these types of things, right? We're talking about sets of strings pretty much. So we say A is decidable if there exists a Turing machine that decides it, right? And then similarly, the opposite way, A is undecidable if there are no Turing machines. Right? Cool, makes sense. And here there's a very similar issue when people say like the Turing machine M is decidable. I don't know what that means. Please, never say this. Ever. Hope that's good. Okay. Done. Burning through this. Having fun. Decides is kind of like a similar thing. Decides is basically, we say a Turing machine decides a language, right? So TMM decides A if M accepts X if X and A, and M rejects X if X is not an A. Makes sense. Cool. And then this last one, it's in red for a reason. This, I've seen some people say this. This here don't ever say this. I don't know what it means. It's not a thing. So when you say M undecides A, I don't know what that means. Like maybe you mean that like it accepts the complement of A. Maybe you mean like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you mean there. But while like my brain is on complement, I do want to mention something. There's another minor misconception people are having, right? Let's say we have the language is equal to such that it's 1. Right? So this is just the set of all Turing machines that accept themselves. Right? If you don't remember what the term complement is, right? Just like jog your memory. If we have some set U, right? And then we have some set A. That's a subset of U. A is basically all the elements that are in U that aren't in A, right? So basically there's no element in the complement of A that's in A, and there's no element in A that's in the complement of A, right? Cool. Why is that important? A lot of people have so like when we're talking about the set of Turing machines that accept each other, what would the complement of this language be? It would be set of all Turing machines that do not accept themselves, right? It would not be why do I say that? Because remember, a Turing machine on a given input can do one of two things, right? It can accept, or one of three things. Reject loop forever. So the complement of this language isn't just the set of Turing machines that reject themselves, it's the set of Turing machines that reject themselves or loop forever on themselves. Another minor thing that just bugged me. How useful is this video going to be? Who knows? We'll find out within like a day's time or something. Yeah, that's like all the sort of definition stuff that I had covered, that I wanted to cover. I might come back for some things. So we can start talking about reductions, I guess. Why do I want to talk about reductions so much? Because like no one understands reductions, and I like that's like the whole course. So I'm gonna start off with like what reductions are, like what they're supposed to be. So this whole course is pretty much like, if I could summarize it, I would summarize it in like these two questions. What can't, this is an apostrophe, what can't computers do? How to show computers can't do things, right? Reductions are one of the answers to this second question here. How do we show computers do things? Well, show computers can't do things. A side tangent. I was talking to Dimitri about test 3. That questions 5.2 and 5.3. During the actual test, I was so confused because I was reading 5.2 and 5.3 and I was like, this is the same question. Why would Dimitri ask the same question? And I asked Dimitri, why are you asking the same question twice? And he said, no, it is the same question, but like, do the students know that? And then I was marking, and I was ashamed to find out that a lot of people did not know that. So yeah, why am I bringing that up now? Basically, like when we're talking about like how to show computers can't do things, we do that by showing that Turing machines can't do things, right? Because if we say that no Turing machine exists, right? That is the same thing as saying no computer program exists. They're like interchangeable statements, right? So to prove that this is the case, so like we use like Turing machines are just our mathematical sort of like formal way of describing what algorithms are, right? So if no Turing machine exists, there is no algorithm. And if there is no algorithm, there is no computer program. That's the whole point of the course pretty much. So yeah, that kind of irked me. But to zero in back on reductions. How do reductions show that computers can't do things? I'm gonna start with like a very simple, like general overview, and then we can get into like a specific example. So say we have, if you couldn't tell by now, this video is unscripted. So let's say we have the language L, right? We know the language L is undecidable, right? Now, we want to show that F is undecidable. This is what we want to do, right? I'm going to write out like a very rough proof thing, and I'm going to go into detail just because I forgot to like lay the template down for this thing, for like my explanation, because I tend to I like pointing at things when I explain things. So yeah, just give me a moment. So we say, okay. Okay. So I think I have something. This isn't robust or anything. It's not super precise what all of this means, but this is just to get like intuitive understandings out of the way. So this step here, right? I'm gonna zero in on this specific step. Why do we, like, in a reduction, right? When we're performing, like, why do we care about this? What is this? This sort of thing here. Okay. This here. Okay. Right? That's what this proves, right? So, okay, I'm gonna jump back here, right? I'm gonna explain reductions using contraposition, because I think contraposition is cleaner than contradiction. I don't always like using contradictions to explain things. You can like flip flop between them, or like not. Okay, no. If you have like a contrapositive thing, you can flip it into a contraposition, into like a contrapositive proof, like vice versa. I'm pretty sure. But so I'm gonna start with contraposition, and then yeah. So we're trying to show that this language is undecidable, right? So we know this language is undecidable. We know this language is undecidable. We're trying to show that this is undecidable. What we can do is we can show that L is undecidable implies F is undecidable, right? So that's a valid thing we can do, right? To show that this is undecidable, we show that this implication holds, right? Because if this implication is true, and if this is true, then this is necessarily true, right? That's just how implications work. So now the question becomes, well, how do we show that this implication holds? There we go, there's my stuff. In case you forgot about logic, this is very, very important principle that you need to keep in mind. Right? So saying A implies B is logically equivalent to saying not B implies not A. If you're unconvinced, draw a truth table and it'll probably help. Maybe, possibly. But why is this important, right? Why is this like a relevant thing to do? Well, if we're showing this, right, to show this, what we can do is show this, right? So this is going to be our A, that's going to be our B. So to show that A implies B, we're going to show that not B implies not A. Right? That makes sense. Right? To show that L is undecidable implies F is undecidable. We show that F is decidable implies that L is decidable. So what we do is we assume that F is decidable, right? To show that this is the case, right? We're going to use a direct proof. We're going to assume this is true, and then we're going to show that if this is true, then this is true, right? So what does this being true mean? What does F being decidable mean, right? It means that there exists a TM, there exists a Turing machine, we'll call it MF, that decides F, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use MF to create ML. Right? So what that does is, okay, we've said F is decidable, right? So now we're going to show that we're going to craft a decider for ML, and crafting a decider for ML will show that if F is true, sorry, if this side is true, then that side is true, right? So once we've gone through and we've done our little thing, right, whatever. So we've shown this relationship is true, right? So we've shown this relationship is true, which means this relationship is true, right? But since we know that this is true, and we know that that's true, this part here, right, that's been given to us, we know that F is undecidable. Make sense? Makes sense. Why do I want to zero in on this so much? A lot of people make a very, very critical error here, and it shows a lack of understanding in some ways of reductions, and in other ways of just logical reasoning. So a lot of people, what they do is, so like just in future, right? Like whenever you're doing this, keep in mind this is what you're trying to prove. If you know that this is what you're trying to prove, you'll never get confused about this, what I'm about to bring up, ever again, right? So what a lot of people do is they say, okay, we're already given that L is undecidable, and we need to prove that F is undecidable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume L is decidable, which, and I say this with love and kindness, doesn't make sense. Yeah, because like here's the thing, right? This here, like it doesn't. Let me figure out how to explain this. Like there's no logical proof technique, at least that I know of, where you assume the conclusion of like an implication, and then like you work your way back to show like the relationship between this and this. Like it's not a thing. Like if you assume, for example, like if you're assuming this is true, right? Like that doesn't give you any valuable information about like what's happening here, and that, like so like I can't. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense, I guess is what I'm trying to say. With all the scribbles. But yeah, the reason why I say like I want to emphasize this so much is because it relates, like it becomes fairly simple when you look at it, right? So this is the language. This is the language you're given, right? You know that this language is undecidable. You're trying to show that this is undecidable. This step, right, whether you like it or not, this step proves this. Right? This is what it proves. It proves that f is decidable implies L is decidable. So if this is going to make any, like if you're going to use this, this necessitates, like in order for it to actually be useful at all, we assume that f is decidable, right? Because then if we get from here, if we say, assuming this is true, we can show that this is true, right? And then that gets us, if this whole thing is true, that this whole thing is true. And then if this is true and that's true, then this is true. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, that's sort of why do we care about this so much? Basically, this is like, well, it goes back to the question of like, how do we show that computers can't do things? Well, let's say I already have something that I know a computer can't do. If I can show that this thing would require this thing in order for the computer to do it, sorry. If I can show that I could use this thing to do the thing that a computer can't do, then I surely can't do this thing, right? That's sort of the idea. And it's a very informal way of phrasing it. I'm not sure I should have even said that. But yeah. So this, like, there it is. There's the whole, I think that's like intuitively what reductions are in a nutshell, right? If we're just gonna recap, this thing here proves this. It proves this statement here. This is what we're given. We know that this is undecidable, right? And we're trying to show that this is undecidable, and to show that this is undecidable, we show that this relationship holds. And if we because showing this relationship holds, showing that this relationship shows that this relationship holds, right? And if this relationship is true, right? If like A implies B is true, and A is true, then like we'll do some quick, some quick truth table magic. Okay, never mind, that didn't work. Yeah. Let me do it quick. Right? So if we can show that like this relationship is true, right? It means it's one out of these three things, right? So if we show that this relationship holds, and if we show that A is true, right, it means we cancel these. Yeah, we've already canceled this one out. We cancel this out. So that basically means that B is true and F is undecidable. And showing that means showing this intuitively. There's another way you can think about it, which is like contradiction. That's sort of what you've been doing with Dimitri, basically. But it's literally the same idea, right? You're showing that this is you're saying, let's assume F is decidable, right? F is decidable means L is decidable. But we already know that L is undecidable, so we cannot have both. L is decidable and L is undecidable, right? It's contradiction. doesn't make sense. But the only reason why we landed up with this contradiction is because we made this assumption. So this assumption is false, and f is undecidable. Fairly straightforward. Maybe I should go to that example now. I'm gonna erase this. Before I do that, let me just see if I have the correct thing. Yeah. Oh wow, that's bright. Okay, so this is basically like this is the thing I typed up for someone a couple weeks back, like before test 2. It's basically like if you don't like explaining contradictions, right? But you still want to get like before I actually move on, I just like when I did this, right? The way we marked test 2 is we basically said we're going to give you 5 marks for this if it's correct, and then 5 marks like the explanation of like showing why this works, right? So that's, I'm going to dive into this example later, but it's like this part that was like 5 marks. I'm only doing it because I'm only doing this like I was only doing this because like I feel like this is the most important part. But yeah, jumping back to this here is basically like if you're struggling with like contradiction, right? Like specifically in reductions, and you prefer to use contraposition. This is sort of like a template that I sort of came up with like on the fly. Not on the fly, but like it was a while ago. Basically, it's like a brief explanation on like contraposition or whatever, right? And then just a very brief outline of what I've just done. Wow, that's bright. Okay, so we know some language L is undecidable. We know that we want to show that f is undecidable, right? We basically say, what we're going to say is, okay, in our proof we're going to say, to show f is undecidable, we're going to show that this relationship holds, right? So we're going to assume f is decidable. That means it's a Turing machine that decides f. We're going to use that Turing machine to create a decider for L, right? And that's just the thing from the tutorial, right? Once we've done that, we can say f is decidable implies L is decidable, right? Because that's what makes sense. Meaning contrapositively, L is undecidable means f is undecidable. That's this. And then since we know that L is undecidable, and we know that L is undecidable implies f is undecidable, we can conclude that f is undecidable. Yeah, I prefer this method simply because, again, I don't like explaining contradictions. If I can avoid explaining contradiction, I will, simply because I think explaining contradictions can get a bit messy. The idea, like using contraposition versus using contradiction, like it'll get you to the same place. It's just the difference is like, because like this here, right, like the meat of the proof is still the same, but like it's like the sides that you're eating the meat with. It's like the difference between like contraposition is like having your meat with chips on the side, and then contradiction is like having jungle oats on the side. So like it's both carbs, right? You're eating meat with carbs, like either way. But like I personally like this experience more. Some people might like this, and that's their prerogative, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna jump into an example now, because that's what I said I would do. Yeah, so this is one from. I'm very tired, just by the way, so that's kind of blurry. But yeah, okay, so this is basically saying, oh wait, before I do this, right? Bring my stuff back. When we say doing this, right? What this means is we are just one last thing. We are reducing L to F, right? That's basically saying solving L is at least as hard as solving F. Or like the problem of deciding L is at least as hard as deciding F. We're very loose on like sort of the words we use a lot of the time. So sometimes we'll say, like sometimes Dimitri will say algorithmically solvable. He just means decidable. It's the same thing, right? So like just don't be scared by those types of words. Yeah, we'll jump into an example now. Because that's what I said we will do. Okay. So, again, I'm just gonna, like, ignoring, like, the actual technicalities of what we're doing here. I'm gonna outline some things already, right? So what is this showing here? Or what is this showing? This here shows that, what is it? Oh yeah. Let's give this Turing machine's language a name, right? We'll call it F. The Turing machine, or the language that this Turing machine supposedly decides, right? F is decidable. So the way of like knowing basically is what I'm trying to say is like the way of knowing which thing goes on the, like which thing is the conclusion, which thing's the antecedent, is basically saying, okay, well, which Turing machine are we told, which language are we told to create a decider for, right? And this, so basically, which Turing machine are we already told? Sorry, not which Turing machine. I'm tired. Which language are we already told is undecidable, right? So in this case, we're being told that acceptance is undecidable. We've already been told that, so that's what goes here. So we're trying to prove that this language F is undecidable, and so that goes there. And so this is the thing we assume is decidable. Fairly straightforward. Let's go into the thingy thing. Let's actually explain. Okay. Let's get into this specific example. I'm just going to read it together. Assume that M blank is a Turing machine with input alphabet binary that solves the following decision problem. Given a binary encoding of a Turing machine M. Before I continue, these are not the same thing. A lot of people did this in test 3 and they lost marks. I think there was like one person who like they were gonna get 50 for the test, and then they did this and I gave them 49. it's not the same thing. It's wrong. There was a question earlier in, I think, Touch 6, where the question was basically, if we want to give as input to a Turing machine an encoding of a Turing machine and some word as an input, how do we do that in such a way that we can definitively say which part is the encoding and which part is the word, right? And the answer is you have a delimiter. So basically what this means is we're saying we have some encoding M, and then we have something here in the middle, and then we have E, or the epsilon, or whatever, an empty string, right? So like in general, when we're saying W, we're basically saying here's the encoding, there's something here, and then there's a word, right? And this is our string. Sometimes this, the delimiter, it really depends on like what we choose it to be or whatever. But yeah, the whole point is you have a Turing machine, something, and then, which is not the same as saying this. The something makes a big difference, right? Because saying, this, that's equivalent, but the something changes the whole thing. I'm getting distracted. Let's jump back. Right? Okay, so given a binary encoding M of a Turing machine, Turing machine M, it decides if M writes a blank during the course of at least one of its computations. Right? So using this Turing machine as a helper function, design a Turing machine that solves the following problem, determine if M accepts W. Okay. So this answer to this, I'm not gonna go over this, by the way. That's self-study, that's homework. But I'll go with this. So this machine that we're gonna say decides if M accepts W. Right? It's gonna take in the following type of input, right? A Turing machine and a word, and it's gonna say, it's gonna create some Turing machine, right? It's gonna create this Turing machine, and then actually I'm gonna zero in on this process here. Why does it do this? Why? I might butcher this explanation, but at least let me try. So the language for this Turing machine, here, right? This one here. This one is the one that we're going to be using as like our helper. We can call it a helper function, we can call it a subroutine, whatever we want to call it, right? We're going to be using it for this. The language of this Turing machine is a set of Turing machine encodings, right? It's not a set of Turing machines attached to words. It's not just a set of arbitrary words. It's a set of Turing machine encodings specifically, right? Giving this Turing machine this input M isn't going to do much to help decide, quote unquote decide, M accepts W. Right? It's not going to do that. So we have to like make a thing. We have to construct a thing. We have to construct some input that's going to help us with that purpose, right? And so this here, this program here, this is like the input that we're going to create, right? So some people saw in the group earlier, I said a lot of these like a lot of the questions that Dimitri has kind of all have, like, that he provides, all kind of have a similar structure. If he sees this and then he decides to change it for the exam, I'm sorry. Practice more. Practice different problems, I guess. But yeah, for like this one, it's fairly simple, right? So basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say, okay, we are trying to create, okay, so this is like the condition we're trying to enforce here, right? We're trying to say, okay, the Turing machine we're constructing, MA, it's going to use M blank, right? And there's going to be some sort of relationship that we want to enforce between M blank and MA, right? In this case, we're basically, what we want to say is M blank will, yeah, so basically we're trying to, yeah, well, I'm going to say M accepts, MA accepts when M blank accepts MA rejects when M blank rejects. Cool. So like, why is that important? Why does it make sense? Why is that a thing? Because that's what this is to help us do. That's what this is for, right? So basically, we're creating, what this is here at a very high level, right? We are creating an input for this Turing machine that's going to force this condition to be the case, right? So the way this Turing machine works, right? It says it's going to simulate M on W in such a way that M will never write a blank, right? So if M is like, it's basically going to say, let's say QISK QJ blank left or right, right? It's basically saying, instead of doing this, we're gonna write some other symbol, right? That way we're basically saying this Turing machine MMW, it's basically going to be M, except it's not going to write a W at all, right? That's the first thing. It's not gonna write a W up until M finishes its running on W, right? From there, we're gonna say if M accepts W, only then will MW write a blank. Why is that so significant? Right? Okay, and then if M if M rejects, then MMW rejects. Why is that so significant, right? We've basically just created a Turing machine that only writes a blank once M accepts W. Why is that important? If our Turing machine only writes a blank when M accepts, then this Turing machine only accepts when M accepts. Does that make sense? And if this Turing machine here, right, it'll never write a blank in this step, and then if M rejects W, then it'll never write a blank, period, right? So this Turing machine, M blank, is going to reject the Turing machine we created whenever M rejects, right? So when this Turing machine will reject when, this Turing machine will accept whenever M accepts W, which is whenever MA is supposed to accept, right? MA is supposed to accept anytime M accepts W, right? And not similarly, but when M rejects, right? M is going to reject our Turing machine either, M is going to reject our Turing machine in any case where this isn't the case, right? So in other words, if M rejects W, or if M loops, then basically that means that this Turing machine never wrote a blank, and so this Turing machine is going to reject, and so this Turing machine is going to reject, because if this Turing machine here only writes a blank when M accepts. Kinda convoluted, but hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe sometime during the week I'll do another example, but I don't know. I'm kind of spent. I'm kind of tired. Did I have anything else? I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, yeah, I think that's it. That's all the stuff that I have the energy to cover. That's all the stuff I have the energy to cover, at least for now. Hopefully this video is actually working and I didn't just do all this nonsense for nothing, and hopefully it helps some people. If you do have questions, I am available on Discord and stuffs. I was planning on doing like some one-on-one consultations and like announcing it officially, but I don't think I'm gonna do that anymore. There's already some people that I'm like planning on like handling in that regard. So I think I'm a bit too busy for that kind of thing. But yeah, hopefully this will help with the exam. Good luck and stuffs. Yeah, that's it from me.